To the Roll of Ability Podcast Network. My name is Emily Gilmer, and a podcast engineer here, and we're excited to bring you another episode of the Aspie Bridge with Suzanne Plumley. We are here every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central. If anybody's interested in um, being a guest, to let us know, and encourage everybody to tune in to our social media, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and so on. But I'm gonna that's where she's staying here, kick herself, and introduce our great guest today.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. It is so exciting as we go on to our 23rd. Wow. Can't believe there are 23 sessions. Now, only the first four are not showing yet, but they will be up very shortly. But I want to say thank you for everybody for coming today. And as you know, with all the awesome Aspies out there in the world, Paul Micallef in Australia, and Sam Stein in the Netherlands, Sarah Hendricks in the UK, Temple Grandin here in the US, and myself and many others around the world telling you what the traits of autism are, the purpose of the mission of the bridge is to help women that feel stuck and victimized in neurodivergent force to come forward to the bridge so that I can help them as the torchbearer to lead them over the bridge back into society, the reemergence into society, where wonderful guests like Holly Menard and last week Kathy Biggs and all of my other guests are there to welcome you either at the top of this bridge or on the other side to say it's safe to come back to society. So, what I would love to do is introduce you to my guest this week. We're talking about female friendships and the importance of when to let go gracefully and when to protect those that we have. So, Emily, can you tell us about yourself and what you do and why this topic is so important to you?
Sure, my name's Holly Menard, and I am in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And thank you so much, Suzanne, for inviting me. I'm a death doula, and that's how I'm going to be approaching this conversation because I feel that friendship is so very important. And while we're alive, we have an opportunity to surround ourselves. Yeah, that's a very important thing that I'll be talking about later. But there are some of you who may never have heard of a death doula, but you may have heard of a birth doula. So, birth doulas are present on the scene to guide, to advocate for when requested, and to be there so that the mom and the dad, the family, whoever it is that's involved in this beautiful happening, knows what to expect so that it can be as seamless as possible. And then we have the end of life. And the end of life, we don't celebrate that, right? We don't. We think of it as this horrible time. And you could say very much so, I am a holistically oriented companion and guide because it's often chaotic and people just don't know where to turn. They can't hear what the doctor's saying because it's so confusing and they don't know whether to continue with treatment, whether to not. They don't have plans or have they fully prepared. And they may want somebody right there by their bedside as they're having their head on the pillow for the last time. So that would be me.
A friend of mine asked me, "Is that kind of like hospice in a way? How is your what you're doing similar and different from hospice in a way?"
And that is a really good question, often asked. The major thing, very most major thing, is we're non-medical, whereas hospice is. And the very next really important thing is that we have time. We have
Mm.
time to spend with our clients. We have time to develop the kind of relationship where people feel like that they can really share. You know, you can, in this way, you could think of your hairstylist, that you've been going to for years, or your best friend, where you feel like you can tell them anything and that you're not going to be judged. You're going to be accepted for exactly who you are. And that person's believing in you when you're not believing in yourself
Wow.
necessarily. And that happens, right?
It does. It really does. And now I can even see more why you're the perfect person for this theme this week, because you are like that treasured friend that is just there to lean on, but then have your shoulders available for someone to cry on.
Yeah.
Just create that relationship. And that's a lot like friendship. Now, before I get going into this, I want to tell you three quick stories about friends who have walked away in my life out of misunderstandings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had one friend, and I'm not going to name my friends, but I had one friend who, this was the first person who decided that they needed to walk out of my life. And she had asked me to protect her from doing a certain action step in her life
Mm-hmm.
because she had gotten into herself into trouble in this action step in the past. And
Yeah.
she said, please, if ever you hear me talking about going back and doing this thing again, please stop me. And when the time came, and she was, and I said, you asked me to protect you. And she said, no, thank you.
Uh,
And then she decided that this other person, this fiance, was more important, and his beliefs were more important than the friendship we had created.
mm-hmm.
So I had to let go of it. I did connect her the year later for her birthday, and she said, texting is fine, but that's all I want. I had to gracefully say, that's where the season came to an end with this individual. The second friend I had walk away, she was someone who would call me up and speak for hours and hours about what her problems were.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a significant issue she was working through. And then when I had something that I needed help with, she wasn't there for me. And that hurt too, because I had given my time to her for the last 18 years. And while she didn't have this problem for all 18 years, the last 2 or 3 she did. And I was expected to listen and be there, and I was a listening ear. But then
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I needed something from her, it wasn't convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
again, that wasn't necessarily my fault. I asked her to be available, and she just wasn't. The third time was a friend I had met in college. And I think there was just a misunderstanding of what I was asking her for. But for some reason, she thought I was asking for a lot more than I was really asking for. And instead of asking for clarity, she just decided it was done. So in each of these cases, you can see that it wasn't necessarily my fault. So I can't blame myself for that. Holly, do you have any situations where someone just decided that your friendship was just not on their radar anymore?
I have. I have. And as you were sharing, it was coming to my mind. This person, I was good friends with her for years, however many years it was. And we shared a lot. We had a lot in common, and we were believing in each other. There was so many good things. We did things, activities that were fun, and we could talk for hours at times. And
Mm-hmm.
she was there for me. I was there for her. And then honestly, how do I say it? I think what her expectations were came to a, I guess, came to a head.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, she didn't feel like I was being there for her. And she's a very detail-oriented person. And she wrote me, really no word of a lie, she wrote me a letter that had to be like both sides 4 pages. And you know, in detail what it was that happened and how the way that I responded or didn't respond in a way of being in support hurt her.
Mm-hmm.
And how, as it all came down, she said, I just don't feel like we can be friends anymore. And as the time went on, I had connection with some of her other friends, and the same thing had happened with them.
Wow.
I thought, wow, I think I might have hung in there longer than these other people. And it was in a similar kind of a way. And what I would love to say, I'm going to focus on that example because that's the one that stands out. I feel like when we meet someone who we feel like no matter what, okay,
Mhm.
we're going to make mistakes,
We
right?
are. Yeah, we are.
We're human beings. We're not always going to be at our best. Sometimes we're going to be wanting to be the center of attention, and it may not be in the healthiest way,
Right.
right? Just wanting sympathy, or it's like, oh, this is so terrible, I agree with you, like that,
Mm-hmm.
which is not very helpful, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and I don't mean to say that in a degrading kind of a way.
No, no,
I think
exactly.
that when it comes to friends, we're unskilled.
Yeah.
We're just not skilled. And we don't have a sense, I'm going to say, even at times, of course, myself, of the
Mm-hmm.
value of having friends. And what I totally, if anybody picks up any part of this conversation, it's that count yourself blessed to
Mm-hmm.
have one person in your life. If you have
Mm-hmm.
more than one, then that's super cool. To
Yeah.
have one person in your life that that it's a mutual feeling. It's like I so honor and respect you and your path in your life. And I realize that sometimes things are going to happen. We're going to be at odds, and we'll talk about it. There might be some period of time where we, don't talk as often. I have a friend
Mm-hmm.
that is in another state, and sometimes it just happens that way. And I think it's part of the natural course, and we always come back together. And
Right.
she recently, the death of her sister really sent her. And she's just finished a ministerial program. It doesn't matter how much we may think we know, when it's
Mm-hmm.
down to the actual experience. This is real recent. And then even more recently, it was her best friend.
Oh,
And
ouch.
she did not expect it. She had some time to prepare for her sister.
Right.
But not, I mean, she knew her health was very, she would be up and she would be down, but she was not expecting to have said goodbye and that she wouldn't see her again. So that was really hard. And yesterday was her friend's birthday. Well, it was her birthday, my
Yeah.
friend's birthday. And they would always share each other's birthdays. So she
Mm-hmm.
was being with her tears.
Yeah.
It was her birthday, and she was in tears over
Right.
experiencing that loss.
Oh, yeah. Understandable. I have one of my leading contributors for my program just lost a great friend too. So I'm trying to help her to come forward and ask for help on bridge builders because I know, and yourself and one other, Pat, who will introduce at some point on our show. I know that you both could do wonders to really help her through this whole process. And I want to thank you for being here. But yeah, that's loss is hard. I
Yes,
had lost someone back when I was 10 years old in a house fire. And that,
mm,
oh, I mean, I wasn't even old enough. At
mm,
that age, it's kind of like you go back in your mind and say, what could I have done differently? What could I have done differently? What could I have done? And sometimes, unfortunately, lives end. We have no control over when a life ends and why a life has to end. And I was that with as a 10-year old saying, why did I have to lose her
mm.
now? She was my best friend in elementary school. And it was so hard. So yeah, losing someone like that is traumatic. Now I
Mhm.
did name my younger daughter after her because she still is in my heart.
Oh, that's so
Children
sweet. So
became
sweet.
Kimberly Plumley, so I did name my younger daughter after her in honor of her. But yeah, I mean that's hard. One
Well,
thing
I brought that up, if you don't mind me
oh, go
continue.
right ahead. No, go right
I
ahead.
brought that up because it may involve like walking that friend home. There's someone who wrote a book, walking each other home.
Mm,
Ram Dass is his name. And it's such a wonderful book because just imagine that you could stay friends with somebody and have that honor and privilege of
mm.
being there, being present to them. And, there's a term, it's called leaning into. Like a lot of times we don't feel we're not qualified, you know, it's like it seems bigger,
Right.
you know, and we simply lean in and be honest. It's like right now, I'm not sure I really know exactly what to say. I want you to know that I'm here,
Right.
and I feel so my heart hurts for you that you're going through this experience. So I'm not skirting around it or,
Right.
can't putting it in any way. Whatever that it could be the loss of a pet, it could be a job, it could be a parent, it could be a loss of any kind.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
When we have that kind of friend, we then we have a treasure. This person is a treasure.
Yeah.
So the first thing was to count yourself so blessed and be grateful that you have one person in your life, and maybe
Right.
two, and maybe three.
Yeah. Well, now my one friend that I was telling you about that I lost at 10 has become an angel friend. And
Yeah,
whenever I need someone to just be there, I feel her presence.
yeah,
Her presence. I'm very much into angels and such. So, and that's what you can help other people when they do lose a child is just to know that it's just another plane. We may not see them, but we can feel them. And
yeah,
in the case of Kimberly Goodwin, I feel her. I've had a couple of accidents and I felt her protection. So,
yeah,
yeah, a loss doesn't necessarily mean forever. It's just a different realm.
yeah. It doesn't mean LOST. It's
Yes.
it's
LOSS is a
and there's
different.
grief. And
Yeah,
there's grief, and that's a very strong and intense emotion that we experience when there is a loss. But it's not like that person is, just away, or there's so much about that I could get into. But
right.
since we're on the topic of friendship today,
Yes.
the
Yes.
next thing that I would love for you to would be a takeaway is that this person or persons in your life are there, that person or persons are there to we nourish each other's soul.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
to me, that means it might be, oh, I read this book and this quote really spoke to me, and it could come through as a text, it come through as a email, phone call, however, it's like I've been thinking about you.
Right.
Now,
Oh,
you're on
yeah.
my heart, and this is something I wanted to share with you.
Oh,
And
that's so funny you say
yeah,
that.
and I'm not gonna pretend that I know what you're going through because I
Mm-hmm.
don't. A lot
Right.
of times that's kind of the go-to, and I'm not saying, that's bad. I'm saying, no, we don't. We're
Mm,
not in that person's shoes. We
right.
we haven't walked their path. We haven't.
No, we haven't.
All we
No.
can say, yeah, and when my son died, I had my experience, and it was unexpected. I'm giving him a hug and saying, have a wonderful evening. He was going to a concert he was so looking forward to. And little did I know that when he left the store that we were running together, that I wouldn't have a conversation with him again. I didn't know that. But what I really was, I learned how to ask for what it was that I really, really knew that
Mm,
I was looking for in terms of support,
right.
right? And it was interesting because since we're speaking about loss in this kind of way in friendship, someone asked me, how can I support you? What
Right. Oh, that's
What
beautiful.
would you yeah, what would you like? What would you love? Maybe it's a meal. I'm going to bring you a meal. What would you like? Do you have any kind of, I think I know what your dietary likes and or allergy, whatever. I'm bringing you a meal.
Oh,
It's
that's
a
so
good day.
wonderful. Yeah.
Instead of, well, what can I do? No suggestions. Like have a suggestion. It's
Right.
like, you may want to get out of the house.
Yes.
What do you think about going out for lunch or for coffee or something like that? So anyway, I happened to, because I said, you know what I would really like? I would like to come over to your house, watch a funny movie, and drink wine.
Oh, yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was what I wanted. And that was what was going to really meet me. And that was what we did. And
Yes.
And so two of my good friends and I came together, and it wasn't like I was the center of attraction, and they weren't there with this kind of, you know,
Pitying or yeah.
no, and again, there is that human tendency to want to know what happened, right?
Right.
And some people really want to have the details. Now, this was, I do believe that a true friend, they're going to hear what it is they're meant to hear.
Right.
Someone
Yeah.
who, wouldn't be considered in that, that soul sister kind of way.
Yeah.
This nourishes my soul. Someone is like, oh, that's so terrible. Tell me what happened. And and I can remember, and I'm really I'm a nice person. I'm kind and understanding, but this person I even did not really know that well. And I was not nice to her. I said, "No, I do not want to talk to you about
I
this."
don't want to go through it again. No, I don't
No,
want to relive it.
no. So, and I'm gonna say it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, that is like, whew, like when the most intense, you don't expect to lose your son. Why wasn't it me? Kind of, all of that. Um, um, but where I'm going with this is it could be during a point of loss because loss happens.
Right.
Death happens. And it could be the death. It could be the death of a marriage. It could be the
Mhm.
death of a pet. It could be any so
Grief
many.
covers, yeah.
Whatever that person is perceiving it. It's their how they're perceiving it. Yeah, it's good. So it's being there. And if there's someone in your life, they may be more than an acquaintance. They may be a friend. You may go out to a movie or out to dinner sometimes, but
That's right. That's where the bridge buddies comes in. That
right.
could be very helpful. Is if you don't have someone, maybe I can connect you with a bridge buddy that can go out and get you out of the house. If you don't feel like you have anyone you can call upon,
Mm,
I
yep.
can call upon someone for you who lives in your area.
Oh, how
So
awesome that is. And
yeah, it's
because you have a relationship with them,
yeah,
you've gotten to know them, and you can make that kind of a, offer.
yeah, exactly.
What do you
That's
feel
why I
about
created
that?
bridge buddies.
And how do you feel about that? Does that sound good to you?
Yes,
And then give
yes,
them the opportunity to decide. But the next thing that I feel like is the most important, now I'm on the third thing,
yep,
the first thing is count yourself blessed to have one friend. And
yep,
the second thing is you want to surround yourself, particularly at a time of loss, however that is looking, with people, those who are going to nourish your soul.
right.
Where you really feel like either you've been the one to nourish someone's soul or they have nourished your soul. That it's just the deepest sense of gratitude, and it's lovely, and it brings tears to my eyes even to think about it, because it's so beautiful to have
Yeah,
people like that in your life. And the next thing is when there are people in your life that are other than that, and you're a kind person, and you have you listen to people, and you want to think the best for them.
hmm,
You want to really be a friend and perhaps offer guidance, and that person isn't really looking for guidance.
right.
They want, wherever they're coming from. You mentioned your friend who was really seemed to be focused around herself and wanting to talk about herself.
Hmm.
um, isn't this terrible? Like you could say, commiserate.
Yeah,
Would you commiserate with me? And I feel like, no,
no,
I
yeah,
don't. And I don't know if it's being the age that I am, if that has anything to do with it. But I've been learning. It doesn't matter on the age at all. But I've been learning to say no, and no can be like a soft no.
yeah, yes,
It
yeah,
can be, just, it was a good time, but I don't know that I'm gonna reach out again, or,
right.
I'm not gonna have that whatever uncomfortable conversation. I really don't think we're getting along. It's like it was fun going to the movie with you, but that's about it. It doesn't have to be like that. And I
No, no, that brings me up to I have a friend that, oh my gosh, back in 1995 when my older daughter was born, she was like a big sister. Served as a wonderful part of being a big sister.
yeah.
But we all go through growth. We all get to a point where we get stronger and stronger. Now, the interesting thing is that I'm willing to have a relationship, but now that I know I'm Ashby, I don't want to get on the phone for hours. And I introduced this friend to the idea that I'm willing to get on Zoom. Well, she doesn't like to do that. She just wants to be able to do other things when she's on the phone. Well, that's not quite having a friendship. That's kind of like keeping yourself occupied while you're on the phone. That's not full attention. So I kind of had to say, well, there was a time in the season, and that brings me up to one of the reasons of what I put into here, which is they liked it when they felt like they were above you in mental
Mm,
position,
mm,
and then when you rise up, as I did in this situation, I was no longer the little sister, but now I was kind of like a side friendship. And there we have a mentor. I've told about her many times, Mary Morrissey, where she talks
mhm,
about this book called The Little Me and the Big Me. Well,
yeah.
in that situation, is kind of like, oh, I'm sorry. I felt like I always went into a box with her, like the little me box. with
Mhm.
her. Or in the case of what Mary talks about is sometimes we have to apologize and say, "Oh, I'm sorry. That was not the big me version. I was being the little me version," which means that I wasn't taking your needs into consideration when I did such and such of an activity. And going back to this friend I was just talking about, it's like it seemed like she wanted to keep me in that little sister box. Well, Holly, you know how much I've grown in just the time you've known me. And
Yeah,
it
no
just,
box for you.
I wasn't willing to stay in that little box anymore. Now, another reason a friendship might end is we had talked about this. I tried to protect her, but she didn't want my help. And then the third thing was the fact that this other person needs support, but they weren't strong enough to give me support. These are all different reasons why we might have
Mhm.
to say gracefully goodbye.
Yeah.
And that's one of the losses that Holly and I are talking about is it's like, you know, sometimes we have to release gracefully. There's a time and a season. And if you're spiritual, Ecclesiastes talks about there's a time and a season to dance and to weep.
Yes.
Well, sometimes when a friendship walks away, we can wait for a little while, but don't pitch your tent and stay there. Just say, okay, I'm going to mourn the loss of this friendship.
Mhm.
It's hard, but it means that we're both growing in different directions. And
Yeah,
when you can say that
completely.
we're growing in different directions, it kind of makes it easier for you to naturally release them because it always means that someone even better for you is coming into your life that you need to make room for.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
If I
go
could say
ahead. Go
something,
ahead. Absolutely. It's your turn.
um, it didn't used to be that I had this kind of something rise up in me when I hear anything that sounds like fixing. It's so easy to do, you know. We're in the conversation where someone else is talking, and we're thinking about the next thing that we're going to say, and it could be self-oriented, it could be other, it could be something, great that we want to add to the conversation, but we're not being present. We're not being present. And sometimes we're better at being present than we are other times.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so we want to bring our best self forward. We want to be that big self. We want to believe in each other, that you're more powerful than you realize. You
Absolutely.
you
Oh,
you
yes.
can handle this, but right now you may not feel like you do, and I'm not going to tell you what you need to do. I'm
Mm-hmm.
here to listen, and if ask me a question, I'll do my best to answer it. And sometimes it's about saying, you know what, this is this is kind of bigger than us two talking together. Have you thought of speaking to a counselor, a therapist, a life coach?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Has that come to your mind? And maybe, I mean, in the sense of a life coaches are, we're holding people up in their highest, and we do want a long-term relationship so that dreams are being achieved. And it's like, okay, what's the next dream? What's the next dream? And it's rather than being directive and that this is write this down, this is what you need to do, or
Right.
anything that kind of smells like that, so to speak. Yeah, it's not fixing, it's
No.
being.
However, there was a situation where I had someone who approached me, and I responded to her, and she might need a little bit of the thera coaching, is what I now call it, because it's someone who can go beyond what a coach can do to get them up to the level of being coachable. And so I look upon, I have two friends who are in that situation who are licensed therapists, who can handle maybe some of the deeper subjects to get them to a point where they can bring them to the coaching level, because there are some things that we need as coaches to look upon our colleagues who have the licensing to get the individual to a level where they're able to respond and receive.
Right.
Now,
Yes.
that's a form of loss in a way, because they need to let go of the control they might have on a situation, or the lack of control that they feel they don't have on a situation. And
Mm.
a thera coach can bring them to where the proper amount of control over their life without being control of everything in their life. And that's
Mhm.
the important thing. So I just created a new level of bridge builders today called a Thera Coach, and I'll tell you about them in another time.
So
But that's
cool.
important. It's important to know that we're not all positive, uppity, toxic positivity. We are going to take you at the level where you're at. And my creating this Thera Coach today said, well, this particular situation I'm reading about may be deeper than I can handle, or any of my other coach colleagues can handle. Let me get you a Thera Coach to get you where you belong at the front of this bridge.
Mhm.
Now, Holly, let's talk about the solutions for releasing a friend positively.
Mm.
One thing I have is finding a middle meeting spot. And maybe you have to create the compromise. And what I mean by that is, I have a couple of friends that are up in Nebraska that I would love to go see this summer. Now, I'm not going to drop everything and run tomorrow to Nebraska. But I have another situation that's going on where I can go up and see them on X dates. So
Yeah.
creating that middle ground. We don't doesn't mean for friendship you're the jump up and go, right?
Right. So, and sometimes we do. Sometimes we do when it's like, you're the person, you're the friend that means the most to me in my life, and right now, I I need you. Just
Yeah.
need it, or so would you come and spend some time with me? And there are times for that. There are totally times for that. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, my situation would be more of a visit, but yes, when you have someone in need of your time, that is a time to say, you know what? They've been here for me. It's
Right.
my turn to be there for them. And that's finding the middle meeting ground. You can't, in the last situation I gave, in my story,
Mm.
I I was in need of a particular set of timing, and she just wasn't available.
Yeah.
And so it was the timing that's, whoa, I'm here and giving my time to you, but
Mhm.
you're not willing to find the compromise to
Yeah.
be there for me.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
like
And in that case, you could say, it's not working out anyhow for right now. It's not.
right,
And there's also situations where it's almost like, if we see ourselves as energetic beings, right? That when you feel comfortable around someone, or you walk into a room and you just get that feeling, and it could be somebody that and you just don't feel like you want to get in their energy. You don't want to be in their energy space. It doesn't feel good. So you remove yourself from that space.
mm-hmm,
And sometimes it can even just happen you're not physically present. And there's that sense of, you're like cutting a cord.
right,
It's
right,
it's and it's something that can be done energetically. I did that with a boyfriend not so very long ago. And it's like, this is done. I wanted to sort of see, is it really done afterwards? And it was like, yeah, Holly, you cut the cord.
right. That reminds me, it's like learning to let them go.
Mhm.
Don't be the scapegoat. Don't be the reason. you're not the reason that they're letting go. It's sometimes their issues.
Absolutely. It works
It's
both
sometimes
ways.
their issues.
Yeah, it totally works both ways.
Exactly. And
Somebody could be like not comfortable with me for some reason, maybe because, I'm like this Susie Sunshine, kind of person, because I do. I mean, people know me for my smile a lot of times. And for people who are grieving, for people who are just feeling like, starts with 8S, ends with T. Just, that smiley kind of way is just, it's that kind of energy is not what a person is looking for, whether they're consciously aware of it or not. So
right.
at that point, I can see it. At church, I feel it sometimes. It's like we start a conversation and then that person drifts away, and
Right.
not to take it seriously.
Personally, exactly. It's like
Not
it's
to take
not
it-
about you. And I
Yeah,
think a lot of my
but
women,
we want it to be. We're going to make it about us because that's what we do.
we do. And I know a lot of my women think that it's their fault that they did something wrong, and it's like we don't know exactly what's going on in the other person's life. You talked about that earlier. We're not in each other's shoes.
We're not.
So if someone has an issue and they just need to walk away, we need to just let them go. They may come back in a month or two, or they may not. And we can't take that as we did something wrong. The last thing that I want to talk about releasing gracefully is sometimes I find that I was in a group with other autistic individuals, and I found that it became too heavy. We were always talking about autism, and I had to leave that group myself because it felt like I was searching for a common misery instead of common interests.
Yeah,
Sometimes been going along with a friend, and all of a sudden you get into another interest that doesn't please them, or they get into something else that doesn't please you.
yeah,
Sometimes we have to know that we can't go their way just because they're going, and they can't go our way just because we're going. And we certainly shouldn't go into a group if there's always going to be, oh, woe is me. Oh, well, sometimes you got to find that common interest group, not that common misery group where you're
yes.
always commiserating with each other, because that's only going to bring the energy of the room down.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
for me, I love crafting, so I found a needlepoint place that I want to go to, and I spend time with it. Are there other neurodivergents in there? Are there other autistic? It doesn't matter. We're sharing a common interest.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
right? Have you ever found someone where all of a sudden they're doing something that you really don't have an interest in, and they want to spend all the time doing that? Have you ever gone their way just to go their way?
It doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel authentic. It can feel kind of, even to some degree, forced.
Right.
And you know what? Why would we want to feel that way? I mean, it could be something that we get that sense. We just, like, our inner voice says, this is temporary. It's temporary. Just hang in there. And then other times it can be downright, what I was thinking, toxic.
Yes.
Toxic.
Yes.
And another thing to hold on to. We got a few takeaways here. There are toxic relationships that can
There's
look a lot of different ways, and we're not required to stay in them. So
no.
it may be that we find ourselves having different interests. That's one thing.
Mhm.
And it may be that a person's gotten into something that you're really concerned about, like what you said, concerned about the direction that they're taking. And you feel like, that I've exhausted what it is that I feel like I can offer this person. I'm going to hold them in my heart and pray for them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let that be okay, because actually prayer is no small thing.
No, just
No,
wish
I
them well, think about them on their birthday, You
Yeah.
can, if they were really close, and you know their address, just send them a just thinking about you card. I mean,
Yep.
I'm sure they'll be touched just to get something in the mailbox. Do what your heart says to do. Don't buy a card if your heart doesn't feel comfortable doing it. Do it because you would love to do it for them. Now,
Exactly.
Holly, we have one last subject I really would like to get to before we wrap things up, and that
Okay.
is taking care of the friendships you have right now so that you're finding that you're nourishing those friendships. And your one way is to accepting or apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a little me speaking. Let me change the way I say this. Let me find a way to make it right. That was a little me version of me. And I don't choose to continue a friendship where I'm not acting in my best version. And the other one is showing gratitude for the person. And let's just say you're out at shopping with another friend and you happen to see this funny card about this little dog that looks like your friend's dog. Pick it up. And
Yeah.
then the next time you're together, just show gratitude for your time together by saying, "Hey, I found this cute card I thought you'd enjoy." That doesn't mean you have to buy presents for them all the time, but just let them know that when they're not in your presence, they're still on your heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I
Absolutely.
found this cute little trinket that I just couldn't refuse when I was on vacation with my family. It made me think
Mhm.
of you. And the
Mhm.
next time you get together, say, I just wanted to give it to you. Or in the case of one friend, I took a picture of a funny little gift because it reminded me of her. And that's
Mhm.
no money spent at all. That's just a picture. The other thing is positive language conversation. As I said earlier, focus on the fun you're having right now. Don't focus on, oh, when we separate, I'm gonna go home to my lonely house. We have my lonely meal, and then I'll go to bed, and nobody's in my room with me. And no, focus on the fun you're having right now. Focus on the now.
Yeah. Focus on the now. Focus on the good. Yeah. I'm so happy that you brought that up because being a giver, being we learn in our coach training to say to use this term, and I really like it. Be a person of increase.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really like that. So being a person of increase can be, a little of something, a card that's not a small gift. It's like who sends cards, puts a stamp and a return address and all that. Yeah, and I'm at the farmer's market and I'll call somebody and say, "Hey, they've got peaches today. And I
Mm-hmm.
know you love peaches. Can I pick some up for you?" Or just pick them up and then
Yeah.
call them and say, "I've got peaches. I'm coming. I'm coming to drop them off." I did that the other day. The person wasn't home and I picked up veggies because I know he's more like a vegetarian eater. And you know what? Another part of it is that when you're friends, you're not looking for that person. May not be that person who calls you back. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard from this person. I called them, told them I was going to leave this, some of the veggies that I had picked up and peaches, and I haven't heard back. But the return, we don't know how it's going to come. But there is such a thing as a law of circulation. If you
Absolutely.
think about it that way, think about it as the giving and the receiving, and that leads to the giving and the receiving, and it's
Mm.
a circle. And when we keep the circle moving, then we have a world that works.
And look for the surprise receiving. I mean, you never know when you're going to get something from someone else. It's like, wow.
Or what form it's going to come in.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, Holly, this has been a beautiful conversation today. I so appreciate your time. And I hope we've answered a lot of the women's questions on releasing friendships that are finished, but also nurturing friendships that are here for us to stay. And you know, I I hate to see women who feel like, oh, nobody cares about me. And it goes back to my bridge buddies. We're gonna make sure you're gonna have a friend. And I also have retreats I'm gonna start. So if I'm in your area and I say I'm coming to your area, I hope you'll reach out and say I want to come visit, or I want to come to a retreat, because we are we have our own built in set of friendships right here. We want you to come and have fun, not come and be miserable. We want you to come and have fun.
Yeah.
Next week, we have our wonderful Wendy back again for relationships, and she has written a book all about relationships while on the spectrum. But in the meantime, Holly, I want to say thank you for coming and talking about this very important subject today.
Well, thank you so much for reaching out and inviting me.
It's been great.
It's been such a win for me. And
Perfect.
I feel like we have formed a bond too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, any kind of comments? Can you comment on the podcast?
They will be able to comment on our YouTube channel, or they can come to the Aspie Bridge Show, which is a Facebook page. So wherever you feel most comfortable leaving a comment, you are more than welcome. There are a number of other websites where I posted this live stream, so feel free to comment wherever. And if you have a question for Holly, go on to the Aspie Bridge Show on Facebook in the group page, and we hope you'll subscribe to this channel as well as come join us in the Aspie Bridge Facebook room. And we hope you have a wonderful day.
And I have a Facebook page. If you're in, it's called, what's it called? Brave Thinking with the Brave Living with the End in View.
Wonderful.
And it is by invitation. You can see it, like it's not private in that you can see it, but you might join. So feel free to join. I would love you to join our community. And then I also have one Holly Menard at one Holly Menard dash end of life doula is what it says, actually, because that's how we were trained, as end of life doulas. But yeah, so you can reach me if you like.
That sounds great. Thank you, Holly.
You're welcome.
Well, signing off for this week. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week with Wendy.
Thank you.